There's only one way to guarantee that you shortcut your ACT prep and get to your target score faster. Everybody has their own individual path, so YouTube videos like this are tough to apply to every single situation, but there is one thing that every single student can do to avoid some of the cookie cutter advice out there and get straight to what they need. Now, I feel like whenever I'm making these videos, I pretty much am always just saying, hey, I get this question all the time. And the reality is I get a lot of questions all the time about ACT prep. I've been doing this for 6 years now, and I've coached thousands of students on the ACT. So the reality is I get a lot of questions all the time. But the thing is that every single individual student has their own needs and their own specific questions that apply only to their specific situation. Just because I get a question hundreds of times doesn't necessarily mean that that question or my answer to that question will apply to your specific situation. And there are tons of super common pitfalls that you can make when you're going along your ACT journey. So in this video, I'm going to go over a couple of specific examples of some of the more common pitfalls that I've seen students make recently, but then I'll also give you the one thing that you can do to make sure that you avoid not just those specific mistakes, but all of the possible mistakes that you could be making with your ACT prep. And the first problem that I just recently saw with one of my students is, again, another problem that I see all the time when I'm working with students. So this student had just joined my coaching program, and as we were discussing the work for the upcoming week that she was supposed to do, she was saying that there was just absolutely no way that she was going to get to be able to finish all the stuff that we had talked about doing. And this caught me a little bit off guard. We were really only talking about a total of about maybe 5 hours of work for the upcoming week, and this student had just finished up her cheer season, so she should have a lot of extra time on her hands to focus 5 hours of the week into her ACT prep. And when we took a look at her schedule day by day at where she was spending all of her time, it turns out that something else had come up that I didn't know about. And that's that she was also preparing for the SAT at the same time that she was joining my program to get a great score on the ACT. Now, when I asked her why she thought it was a good idea to try and prepare for both the ACT and the SAT at the same time, she said that she just wanted to cover all of her bases and make sure that she was going to get a good score on both tests so that all the colleges knew that she was great at both tests. But in reality, this doesn't actually make that much sense if you have the full context of the situation. Colleges only care about one of the tests, and they look at the tests completely interchangeably. If you have a great ACT score, let's say you have a 34 or 35 on the ACT, you would only submit that 34 or 35 on the ACT. You wouldn't also try and get a 1500 on the SAT and submit that as well. Since colleges look at these tests completely interchangeably, they see that 35 on the ACT, and they don't even need to look at your SAT score. They don't need to see an SAT score anywhere in there. So what I did with this student was just give her the full context of the situation, and it helped her reframe what she needed to be doing. She didn't need to be spreading herself thin trying to prepare for both tests at the same time. All she really needed to do was get a great score on one test, and she had already decided that she could probably do better on the ACT, which is why she joined my coaching program in the first place. But all we needed to do was dedicate all of our time and all of our effort to the ACT instead of trying to distract ourselves and balance a bunch of different things all at the same time. Now, again, this is a very common mistake that I see out there, and the solution is to just go all in on the ACT for a short period of time where you're just going to fully dedicate yourself to ACT prep without distracting yourself with a bunch of other things. Now, another problem that a student recently came to me with was her struggles on the reading section, and specifically with timing of the reading section. She had spent 8 months preparing for the ACT, really focusing most of her efforts on this reading section, and she just wasn't able to figure out how to get all the questions done in time. She had already gotten a great score. She had a 34 in both the math section and the English section, so we were really just focusing most of our time on the reading section and then a little bit of time on the science section. Now, over the course of the 8 months that this student had been trying to get faster on the reading section, she had unfortunately misdiagnosed her problem. She thought that her problem was that she wasn't reading the passage quickly enough, and therefore she wasn't leaving herself enough time to answer the questions. But when we dug into it a little bit more and I dove into her diagnostic test and what the specific mistakes were that she was making, I found out that it wasn't really a problem with getting the information from the passage in a quick enough amount of time. It was actually that she was spending too much time specifically on little picture questions where she wasn't recognizing the key words, and therefore she was spending a little bit too much time on each one of those little picture questions, not necessarily the passage as a whole. And so the solution to this was giving her some drills to practice specifically finding those key words on the little picture questions, and that allowed her to move through those specific questions a lot quicker on the reading section. And that actually added up. She saved probably 10 or 15 seconds on every single little picture question, and that actually allowed her to finish the test on time and even have a couple minutes left over at the end of the reading section to check up on her work. So she thought that she had a problem of just not reading quickly enough. But unfortunately, she didn't know what her problem actually was. Her problem was something a little bit different than that. And therefore, the solution that she had been practicing, that she had been really working on, of reading faster, didn't really help her at all. And that's why her score didn't go up. And it wasn't until we really practiced those little picture questions that her reading score ended up going up from a 25 up to a 33, and that ended up getting her a 34 overall on the ACT. Now, if those two examples of different problems that students have had sound completely unrelated, it's because they are. Every single student out there, again, like I've been saying, has their own individual problems that they need to overcome. Now, we'll get into another quick problem that a third student had that's, again, completely unrelated, and then we'll talk about how all of these things tie together and how you can go through and avoid all of these mistakes and any other potential mistakes that you make on the ACT as well. Now, in my coaching program, I give students access to message me at any point in time with any questions that they have about any practice or really anything else that they have going on. And now one student was running into the problem of not seeing that much improvement as quickly as we would have liked on some of his practice tests. And he really had the inclination to want to just see my explanation for all the questions that he was getting wrong each and every time that he missed a question. And this was one of his problems that he was having before he joined my coaching program as well, is that he was going through an ACT prep booklet and using their practice and then just looking at the answers and basically having the solutions guide spoon feed him the correct answer each and every time because it felt good to him. It felt like he was getting better. And he thought that he was just going to take that same mentality into my coaching program and have me just explain each and every single question that he was getting wrong. But unfortunately, that's not how actual learning works. Just because it feels good to see my explanation to the question that he got wrong on number 27 or whatever it was, doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to be able to get that question correct the next time that he sees it. This is the classic spoon feeding mistake that I see tons of students making out there, is they just want to see somebody else explain an answer to them, and then they think that they'll just get that question right the next time. But fortunately, because I was working with this student in an individual capacity, I was able to see this problem pretty quickly and say, okay, we're actually not approaching these practice tests the right way. What we need to do instead is go through and really drill on these question types that you're missing more of, and not necessarily just sit there and try and absorb the explanation by just watching somebody else do it. But what we ended up doing was giving him some practice drills so that he could recognize and solve those questions on his own the next time that he saw them, instead of just passively sitting back and watching somebody else explain the answer to him. Now, in each of these three situations, there was a different problem that was unique to that student. Now, if those students had tried to solve each one of their individual problems with some mass market solution like a prep booklet that just covers generically everything that could maybe be on the ACT, or by just watching some broad YouTube videos, they would never have actually solved their specific problem. Broad advice can sometimes be very useful, but at the end of the day, it can only go so far to your specific situation. And that's where an ACT coach like myself can come in and help you shortcut the process to actually figuring out specifically what the mistakes are that you're making, rather than just giving you some broad brush cookie cutter approach to the ACT that works for most students in most ways, but not your specific situation with what you need help on. Now, I personally like to think about this like trying to get better when you're sick. It's kind of like if you have a headache, there are like 2,000 possible reasons for why you could possibly have that headache. And what you can do is you can go on Google and try and figure out exactly which one of those 2,000 reasons is why your head is hurting. And you can try some home remedies that Google gives you, and maybe you can end up, hitting the lottery and figuring out exactly why your head's hurting and what you need to do in order to stop your head from hurting. Or what you can do is you can go find an expert in the field, like a doctor, who can give you specific advice to your specific situation. That doctor is an expert because they went to school studying specifically why heads hurt for 12 years or whatever that is. And then they probably practiced that knowledge in the real world for another like 20 years or something like that. And so when you go into that doctor's office, they've seen a situation just like yours a ton of times before, and they know exactly what to give you, and they know exactly why your head's hurting, what you need to do to fix it, whether it's some sort of medicine or some sort of just ice pack or something you put on your head. I don't know, because I'm not a doctor, but whatever it is, that doctor can give you the specific advice that you need. Now, if you're healthy, it's not super urgent that you go to a doctor. Just like if you have a perfect 36 on the ACT, you probably don't need an ACT coach. But if you are sick, it's probably a good idea to go to a doctor and have them help you out. Just like if you need to improve by a bunch on the ACT, it's probably a good idea to get an ACT coach who's been there and done that before and can help you with your specific situation. Now, of course, I'm going to continue putting out right here on YouTube all the best videos that apply to as many situations as possible. But at the end of the day, this will just be broad advice and it may not apply to your specific situation. So if you want to really shortcut your path to success, the best way to do that is to hire an ACT coach. And if you want to join my coaching program, where I coach all of my students individually and make sure that we solve all of their problems with whatever solution is right for their situation, then there should be some information in the description down below to see if my coaching program is a good fit for you and how you can get in contact and learn more and all of that good stuff. And other than that, stay tuned to the channel right here on YouTube and check out my stuff over on Instagram for more information on how to improve your ACT score, and I'll see you soon.